please join us in saying,
Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Hi, my name is Chris Jablonski, and it is my great joy and privilege to serve you as your minister and to welcome you to a very special Sunday service. We are so grateful to have Matt Meyer leading worship with us today. Matt is a wonderful worship leader. He is a Unitarian Universalist treasure. I've known Matt for many, many years, and we've led worship together, and we've hosted him leading worship in lots of different congregations and settings. And we've had him here before at First Church. Matt brings a singular joy, a contagious spirit, a theological depth, and a spiritual maturity and wisdom that I deeply cherish, and wonderful, wonderful music. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Come, let us worship together.
Hello, my name is Ariane Frank, and I would like to open this worship service with the following poem. Invitation to Brave Space by Mickey Scott Bay Jones. Together, we will create brave space, because there's no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars, and we all have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We all call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. But it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side.
I'd like to share a story with you all this morning. This is a story about a young girl named Miriam. Now, Miriam was just about to enter the 4th grade, and she was thrilled, because that was the year in her school when every student got to learn an instrument and play in the school orchestra. And Miriam loved music. So on the first day of class, she showed up to the orchestra room extra early. She walked in and she looked around at all of the wonderful instruments. There was the giant bass drum, the beautiful violins, shiny brass trumpets. She wondered which instrument she would get to play in the orchestra. She saw her teacher, Miss Berman, there, and she said, "Here I am. What instrument do you need me to play in the orchestra?" Miss Berman looked at her. "Miriam, right? I think I've got just the right instrument for you." And she disappeared a moment later into her office and came out again with a tambourine. "A tambourine?" Miriam said. "Well, is that even an instrument?" "Well, of course," said Miss Berman. "Every great orchestra needs a great tambourine player, and you are our tambourine player." Well, Miriam took the tambourine, but for the whole rehearsal all day long, she ended up just playing the same rhythm over and over. It went like this. Dot, 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 dot. Can you all try that? Dot, 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 dot. And the next day, the whole day, through the whole rehearsal, she just played that same rhythm over and over again. It went dot, 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 dot. And then Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, the whole rest of the week, it was that same rhythm over and over and over. It went dot, 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 dot. And you might guess Miriam was not any more excited about the tambourine at the end of the week than she had been at the beginning. So that Sunday when she went to church with her family, she was feeling pretty sad about it. She sat down in her Sunday school class, and her teacher Mahesh noticed that she was looking down. He asked her about it. She said, "Well, I was so excited to learn an instrument and play in the school orchestra, but I ended up with the tambourine, and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes, da-da-da-da-da-da." "The tambourine," Mahesh said. He said, "Did you know that where my family is from in southern India, we call it a kanjira?" Can you say that? Kanjira. He said, people spend their whole lives learning to play the kanjira. It's a beautiful and complicated instrument. And every sound that you can make on the kanjira, you can also sing. And so people put the sounds, the rhythms of the kanjira together to make poetry out of the rhythms of it. Takitatum katadengi natantum tatum. People write whole books of the poetry of the kanjira. Where I come from, he said, the tambourine is an instrument for creating poetry and, beauty in the world. Poetry and beauty, Miriam said. Can you all say poetry and beauty? Well, that doesn't sound so bad. After church, all the adults were running around at coffee hour, but Miriam sat by herself, and a family friend came to join her. Anna sat with her, and Anna remembered. She said, "This was the week you were going to begin the 4th grade and play in the school orchestra. How's it going?" "Well," Miriam said, "I ended up with the tambourine, and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes, da-da-da-da-da-da." "The tambourine," Anna said. She said, "Did you know that where my family is from in Brazil, we call it a pandeiro?" Can you say pandeiro? She said people have been playing the pandeiro for generations in Brazil. And in fact, she said when my ancestors were brought to Brazil as enslaved people, they would play the pandeiro as a way to bring the community together, to sing and dance and take care of each other even when times were so difficult. And they would even use the music of the pandeiro to secretly practice martial arts to protect themselves against the people that held them as slaves. Well, where I come from, the tambourine is an instrument for creating community and safety. Safety and community, Miriam said. Can you all say safety and community? Well, that doesn't sound so bad. So Miriam was thinking about all of this when she went back to school the next day. She saw her teacher, Ms. Berman, there, and she told her about the kanjira and the pandeiro, about poetry and beauty and safety and community. But she said, "I don't know what any of that has to do with me. I'm still playing the same rhythm all week long that goes dot-dot-dot-dot-dot." "Well," Ms. Berman said. She said, "Miriam, do you know where your name comes from?" "Well, of course. From my parents." "Well, right," said Ms. Berman, but do you know who Miriam was?" She said, "In your family's history, there's a story of the ancient Israelites fleeing slavery in Egypt to travel towards freedom. And while they were making their way on their path to freedom, when they were making that dangerous journey, they stopped to celebrate that they were on their way to a better place. And it was a woman named Miriam who got that party started with her tambourine. And women like Miriam in ancient Israel and all over the Middle East would play the tambourine for weddings and festivals and celebrations. In your family's history, the tambourine was a way of celebrating love and celebrating freedom. "Love and freedom," Miriam said. Well, that sounds pretty good. Eventually, Miriam went on to try out some of the other instruments in the orchestra. She played a bit of the bass drum and tried out the violin and played some trumpet, but she always remembered this story of the tambourine. How all around the world and all throughout history, people had taken the simplest of instruments they had in their hands and found ways to use those tools to shape their community, to create poetry and beauty, safety and community, to celebrate the journey we're all trying to make towards love and freedom. Part of what we do here on Sunday mornings when we gather to worship in whatever ways we gather is not just to come together and remind each other about the values that are most important to us, but to think together and even challenge each other, to think of how we can use whatever instruments, whatever tools we have in our hands to shape the world around us, to create the kind of world we want to live in together. May it be so. Our opening song this morning is Blessed Motion, written by Annie Zylstra. She was inspired in part by the words of Martin Prechtel, who had survived an earthquake in Guatemala. He spoke of what it was like to have the earth beneath his feet, that which had always been so reliable, so permanent, suddenly in motion. He said the idea, the myth of solid ground is a myth believed by those who live on the earth rather than in it. These days it can feel like the earth beneath us is shifting quickly and in uncertain ways. And so I invite you into the spirit of this song. Please sing along at home. There's a high part and a low part, some call and response. Find whichever part works best for you, or make up some new parts or some new harmonies. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. Now the low part. All moves on in perfect motion. All is change and ever rolling ocean. All moves. We'll do that part two more times. In perfect motion, all is change and ever rolling ocean. All moves on in perfect motion. All is change and ever rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground till I saw the earth in motion, the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground till I saw the earth in motion, and the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion. I start just about every day with a to-do list. Usually an overly ambitious to-do list. And near the top of that list most days is writing. It's something I still struggle to make time for, though. One of my favorite authors, Anne Lamott, talks about how hard it is, in fact, to just sit down every day and write. She says the discouraging voices will hound you. This is all piffle, they will say, and they may be right. What you are doing may just be practice, but this is how you're going to get better. Some of the best writing advice that I ever got was from a teacher who said, "Don't write, just write what you would write if you were going to write." I sometimes feel like I haven't written anything since, but I have written a lot about what I would write if I did. You might call this the practice of practicing. The demons of perfectionism stand in the way of good writing, just as they stand in the way of creative risk-taking in general. Which is unfortunate, because creating a life for yourself that does not yet exist requires creative risk-taking. And certainly being your best self in uncertain and anxious times will require setting aside those voices that say your efforts are all just piffle, the discouraging voices that hound us all. When the demons of perfectionism show up like this, I try to practice the practicing of showing up for myself and for others. One of the requirements for all students at Berklee College of Music, where I attended, is 4 semesters of ear training class. Ear training is learning how to sight sing notes on a page or transcribe notes onto paper just by listening to a song. And when I started, I knew that there were people who were capable of such magic, but it all seemed like some kind of Harry Potter nonsense to me. Like, you may as well ask me to make a feather float above my desk using my conductor's baton. On the first day of ear training class, I remember there was a sort of nervous silence among us beginning students. Silence, that is, except for one student who was quite loud in his nervousness. He interrupted the teacher to share that he was worried the class was going to be too advanced for him, that he knew, in fact, not a single thing about ear training. The teacher kindly paused his introductions to explain that, well, we'd all taken entrance exams and he was confident we'd been placed in the appropriate class. The teacher tried to continue but was interrupted again. Well, the man said, "Is this the very lowest class? Because I need to be in the very lowest class." Well, our poor teacher looked around the room kind of sheepishly, not wanting to explain that, yes, we were in fact a class of the most basic students. Well, he said, this is Ear Training 101, so it is just about the lowest. There is, I suppose, a class of people that have previously failed the 101, but you all are just about the lowest. Now, some of the other students giggled a bit at this man's anxieties. I was kind of glad to hear, though, that someone was questioning the absurd notion that sight singing could be taught. I don't know what happened next for that student, but he never came back to our class. Not because we did anything on that day that was too hard for him, but I think because he lacked a belief that improvement was even possible. I kept going, thinking that if other folks had done this before, it must be possible somehow, and I made a commitment to at least practice the material. I've always remembered that student, though, who gave up before he started. It's not just that he didn't try to become a master at ear training. It's that he didn't even try the practicing of it, which always struck me as the real loss. When the discouraging voices hound me, I sometimes think of him and remind myself, maybe for now, maybe just for now, this is just practice. Because practice is how you're going to get better. We are in the midst of a time of uprisings, calling for change. People are gathering in the streets and taking all kinds of actions in all kinds of ways to demand that we build a new world in the shell of the old. Calling on those in power, which in some ways is all of us, to play a different role, to learn a new tune, to practice some new skills. Particularly for white people, there is a call for us to learn some new things, to practice some new skills, to study up on the racist history of this country and the racist present of it. It is a time for listening in ways we may not have done much before. A time for having some hard conversations we haven't yet practiced enough. When you see black folks making demands, practice amplifying those demands by repeating them on the phone to your representatives, to your colleagues, to your family. If you inherited wealth that was accumulated in a time of racist segregation in this country, which is true of all wealth in this country, it is time to practice giving it away. If your muscle memory has been to call the police when something goes wrong, it's time to practice something different together, learning the skills for community safety and accountability. I know I won't do all of these things all of a sudden, once and for all, but I will practice the doing of them. Musicians know as well as anyone that muscle memory is real. That slow and consistent practicing changes the very structure of our brains, rewiring our circuitry, forging new connections and new possibilities, particularly when the new skills and new ways of being are constantly being demanded of us. No one is born a musician. Even songbirds need elder birds to sing and teach them the tunes. Practice doesn't make music perfect, but it makes music possible. And so let us together practice the practicing. Practice won't make the world perfect, but it makes a better world possible. I know I want to be expert in justice and compassion when anxiety moves in the air like a storm, when change moves beneath us. I want to be well practiced at creating brave space even when there is no such thing as safe space. These are daunting tasks, to be sure. And on most days, learning to transcribe a symphony seems more manageable. But that's okay. For now, I don't have to do all those things. I just need to practice doing what I would have done if I had committed to them. Don't promise to be your best self today, dear ones. Just be the person you would be if you were practicing being your best self. Don't try to rebuild this new world in the image of love this week. Just practice what you would do if you had committed to such things. You have the right to start somewhere and the right to continue to grow. Let us start together. Let us practice together. May it be so. Our closing song is Let the Life I Lead Speak for Me. I originally had learned that the song was a traditional folk tune, but it turns out that it was actually adapted from a 70s R&B group, the Consolers. Let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the life I lead speak for me. Let the friends I have speak for me. Let the friends I have speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the friends I have speak for me. Let the work I do, let the work I do speak for me. Let the work I do speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the work I do speak for me. Let the songs I sing speak for me. Let the songs I sing speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the songs I sing speak for me. Let the love I share speak for me. Let the love I share speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the love I share speak for me. Let the life I lead, let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. Dear ones, you have a right to start somewhere and continue to grow. Let us grow together. Let us begin together. Let us practice together. Go with love, go in peace, and go and be blessed as you are a blessing to others.